Welcome in, everybody. Joe Quills here with you on this Tuesday night. And I think I know what happened. So if that's playing twice, I do apologize. It's because it didn't play on my end, but I am tinkering around with the Stream Deck here. So I think I know what the issue was there. So I guess I'll have something to listen to tonight once the show is over. Now, first of all, before I begin, I do want to apologize for two things here. First, I've been saying I'm getting the audio files up, but I have to let you guys know this is a one-man operation. And, sometimes the ADD kicks in and I'm like all over the place. So sometimes I forget all about it. And the next thing you know, things happen. And I do apologize for that. If you ever forget, if you ever notice, if you subscribe to the Joe Quill Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, I do want to apologize because this is a one-man operation and I do everything myself. Should I delegate? Maybe, but um, but with my real job, with writing the articles for Bleacher Brothers and everything else, something takes a hit and it's the audio. So those are listening to the audio side tonight. I'm doing everything I can to get this up tonight. Matter of fact, I think as soon as the show's over, I'm going to wait for it to make sure that the video is ready to be downloaded. I'll download the audio portion of it. Boom, we'll send it out. So if you're hearing this Monday night or early Tuesday morning, I do apologize for the last couple of weeks with MIA shows. But if you ever if you ever if you ever see that there's no show, it's either one of three things. Well, one of two. There's no show, whether it's because I'm on vacation, I'm sick, I'm this, I'm that. Something that causes me to cancel a show. Um, well, that's basically everything there. Or the second thing is I get so backed up on things that I just never get it up, and the stuff times out. So that's the reason why. So I do apologize for that, and uh, especially if you're listening after the fact, because I am aware of it. And by the time Thursday or Friday comes around, it's like, dude, I don't feel like doing this. It's also 4 days worth. It's 4 days worth of shows I got to confirm and all that, and it's just really a little it wears me down a little bit. So, but but the thing is, work is first. This is second, and I'm still gonna bust my ass for you guys to make sure everything is the way I want it to be, not just how AJ wants it to be. Chris Visser, who's the PD for Bleacher Brothers, um, I do my own thing. So, and that's something I want you guys to know that I work 8 hours over there getting screamed at by customers, and then I come here for 3 4 hours, 2 3 hours, and have fun with you guys and prep for the show. Sometimes I prep even while I work. I see an article and I was like, oh, let me print this up. This is interesting, something like that. Um, so yeah, um, so that's why we didn't have the articles now, or that's why we didn't have the audio pods, which is basically just an audio of this show. Also, I do want to apologize for last night. Um, as we know, we had a big storm go through the area last night, and Mike canceled on me about 6:30 or so, 6:30, whatever the timestamp says on my phone. And I told him when the winter came around, if there's a storm, I don't want you coming all the way up here. So he invoked that with the storm that was going outside. So I was like, or with the pending storm, I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. So I was planning on flying solo last night after that. But what I was trying to do is I'm trying to watch the radar and everything because I kind of have an idea of how weather is and all that, having taken weather classes at college. So, or when I finished up my bachelor's degree at Drexel back in 2010, 2011, 2012. So, so I have an idea, weather and all that. So, and I can pretty much gauge, on the on a radar when we'll get hit. So, as the storm kept getting later and later, because at first when they were saying this, they were saying it was going to be a 2 day storm. It was going to be Monday and Tuesday. So it was like, oh shit, no Phillies game on Monday, maybe no game on Tuesday. So, and the reason why they give you that Tuesday, they give you today off, is because if that home opener is postponed, you just move it to Tuesday, and those with tickets don't have to do all the stuff that they do. But I mean, you still have to do a whole bunch of going through going through a bunch of hoops because of the fact that all your plans for Monday are now shifted to Tuesday. I know me with my job, if I had tickets, I didn't because I was working. I knew I'd be working. Um, you'd go through all these hoops, and then you got to go through a whole new set of hoops just to work, just to get there on Tuesday, especially a guy like me who has a regular 40-hour job. So we didn't get, so I didn't get that all done, or so I didn't go to the game, but so I was timing it, and it was starting to rain. It was starting to get real windy, and then starting to hear thunder and lightning, and starting to see lightning and everything. So I was like, you know what, I'm canceling. So I canceled about 8:45 last night. Short notice, but I did warn everybody on X and on Facebook that the show's tentative because of the fact that I don't want to say to you guys, oh, I'm not doing a show. I mean, there are situations where life things come up and you have to cancel. So, what happened in my case last night, it was like, well, also at the setup here, as you can see to my right here, you see windows here. I'm right next to a window. When Mike sits on the other end of the table, even though it looks like we're in two different spots, he sits in front of in front of a window. So and there, lightning can go through a window. So with the storm the way it is, and also all the travel that Mike does to get here, I had no problem with him canceling on me, and also, um, I canceled at the last minute, but I did let you know that things were tentative because of everything going on with the weather. Because um, because I was gauging the radar because my phone kept saying around 8 o'clock. So I was like, So, and especially once Mike canceled. So I was hoping it wouldn't start till like almost 10, because at least I could try to get a half an hour to an hour and say an extremely short thing and just save it on opening Phillies home opener. I mean, that probably would have been the whole thing. But, and it was lightning pretty bad here. So I was like, you know what? I'm not taking a chance here because either the power goes out, which it did not, surprisingly. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but the way my luck can be, and sometimes I have this luck where it's like, Jesus Christ, will you stop winning? And there's sometimes like with most of my horse racing picks, it's just like, I mean, and you lose by noses and stuff like that. Um, so a lot of what I have, you know, it was just that it wasn't just the lightning and everything else. It was, well, what if the power goes out? Because if the power goes out, it'd be like, you'd be sitting there like, Joe, 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 kind of like in um, you know, Penny, 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 same thing. So I did want to make sure that if I was going to do a show, I was going to do at least an hour because I sit next to a window. Mike sits next to a window, even though he wasn't going to be here Monday night or last night. So everything came into play there, and I was like, you know what? We can always do it tomorrow. And that isn't something I mean, I really don't like to cancel because this is my fun time of the night. This is where I get to talk to you, the viewers that are watching the show. So, um, I'd love to just talk to you guys and talk sports and even talk about little light things like these little things like doing stuff like that. Like I talked about, like the weather and Mike canceling, then me canceling and all that. I don't like canceling at all. I mean, I would rather have done like a half an hour to an hour show, but it just wasn't in the cards. I didn't want to do anything that really messed up with things. So I was like, you know what, we can do it another night. So we ended up doing. Um, so we ended up canceling last night, but we're here tonight, and we're going to have some fun tonight. We're going to talk some sports here, and like always, more than happy to discuss some of these topics here with you. And some are more suited for yesterday, but since the Phillies didn't play today, I can talk about Phillies opening day in my eyes from my computer chair as I was working because I just slide the computer chair over to my work stuff. Um, Jurickson Profar gets an 80-game PED violation. Um, uh, I'll talk about. Eh, I'll talk about torpedo bats. I had an article that I printed up, but I'm not going to go off of that. I'm just going to wing it, so to speak, on there. So, and then we're going to talk the NFL meeting news over the last couple of days, the Thursday night football stuff, the rule changes that were approved, the ones that are tabled, those were denied. All those little things that were going on there, and anything else that comes up. So feel free to fire a comment in the chat here. And my sidekick. Good thing I didn't say side cock. Uh, my sidekick is here. That's what I'm trying to say, everybody. It's been one of those days, and we'll get everything here started here. Um, so the Phillies did win yesterday, and your boy decided last minute before the game started. Um, you know what? They're giving me $25 on BetMGM. Fuck it, I'm hitting Kyle Schwarber with the homer. and it hit at 240. So I ended up getting 85 bucks back or whatever, and I threw some of it back last night, but because it was there. But um, I just want to give my thoughts on everything. First thing I have to say is, and Mike knows this from my neighborhood where I'm at right now. Um, as you remember, the end of January, we had that plane crash on Cottman Avenue. Um, this is something that came to me earlier today. And I said it in our group Slack chat that we have at work. And this was also the case when I was at my old house as well, but it was more just actually hearing the planes go by overhead. Um, but you could hear the Jersey Devil fighter wing, I think it's the 177th. Um, they were circling around Northeast Philly because they're waiting for the call and they'll zip through, do the flyover over Citizens Bank Park, and park the planes wherever they land them, and do a publicity shoot at the stadium, which they did with Taryn Hatcher in the sixth inning. I'm sure they were doing um, the uh, for the seventh inning stretch and all that. Um, so Um, but it was really weird because 2 months after the crash, I think it was 2 months to the day, basically. Um, we sat there. I mean, I was sitting here. I'm hearing these planes. I'm like, I wonder how many people are sitting here right now saying, "Oh shit, something's going to happen again. Something's going to happen." Now, mind you, I was sitting here when that plane crash happened, and from what I could tell from the radar that some Twitter account had on there, because they were able to track the plane for the 60 seconds or so it was in the air from about Grand Avenue to Coppin Avenue. Um, the one thing is, when I was working, and it may just be because I'm on the other side of the building. Now, I'm sure if I'm across the hall in 212, I'm sure I would have heard it. But because I'm in 213 here on the other side of the building, on the other side of the hallway, the the concussive force, or whatever you want to call it, of the of the um, of the crash, and the air movement and everything like that, I'm sure I'm sure that the other side heard it, and I'm guessing that this side facing this way, we didn't hear it. I mean, that's my speculation. I'm not the type. I wasn't the type of person I was going to ask anything, only because I was like too busy saying, "Hey, I'm okay," before you say anything, because I got a couple of texts right away, and I sent one person a text right away, and I said, "Hey, there was a plane crash about a mile from me. Just like, no, I'm okay. It didn't affect me." But when you looked over that that Twitter site where they posted that picture, it went over the building next door. So if it would have crashed into that building next door, you would have mass casualties there, and who knows what would have happened on this side, because of the fact, you know, the splatter, that the whatever you want to call it, the ripple effect. That's the best way to describe it. You know, it would have hit this building, and this building probably would have on fire as well. But at least if, and I'm not being morbid here, so at least here, if something like that would have happened and it hit the building next door, I mean, especially if it was next door, I would have a good chance to get out, because the steps are right here. And Mike knows exactly what I'm talking about, because you take about 5, 6 steps from the door for the stairs, and you're at my apartment. So, like, I could escape and go up the street or whatever. And Mike agrees with me. He knows all about my apartment because he's been here every week for the last 6 months, I think it is. So, um, but you know, um, but I can imagine these airplanes flying overhead, and some people may have PTSD because I mean, I walked down Cotton Avenue a couple of weeks ago when I went to my failed attempt to get a real ID because my electric bill didn't match my ID perfectly because it said GC instead of apartment, and just because it's the building I'm in. But um, I'm wondering, was anybody getting PTSD, especially those that don't follow sports? Even though they're probably watching the news and they're saying, "Oh, Phillies home opener, blah blah blah," this and the other thing. So, I'm just wondering if that was the case there because, you go down Common Avenue, every side street there that dead ends at Cottman Avenue or Roosevelt Mall there, like especially right around the Duncan, because that's about where the plane crashed. Because it crashed into the sidewalk, and they fixed the sidewalk right away as soon as they found the black box. Um, they do have buildings that are boarded up right now, and you can see like the the board. I'm calling them boards, but you would get the idea. Like the boards for the roof, a lot of that is sheared in the like. There's pieces missing off of that. You got houses that are boarded up. 2, 3 houses in, so you still have a lot of reminders of what happened a couple of months ago, and it could have been a whole lot worse than the 7 people that were gone, but I wonder how many people, especially in that area not far from me, which is within walking distance, I wonder how many people were saying, "Oh shit, here we go again. Oh no." See, I knew what it was because even in my old house, I would be sitting there and I would hear them just go right down. And you would hear that effect, that sonic boom or whatever. Well, it ain't really a sonic boom, but you get the idea. But it used to be like the Willow Grove Naval Air Station, which ended up being something else now. Um, they would fly out of there or somewhere else in the area or, wherever the 177th is. At least I think it's the 177th in New Jersey. They would fly over here to set up and they do a couple laps or whatever you call them, loop de loops, and then go. So, um, but we did have that. We did have we did have all the pomp and circumstance that you get. Like you had the Phillies coming in from center field down the steps, and once again, nobody got hurt going down those temporary stairs. Um, Unfortunately, Dan Baker's still the PA announcer, so he's as a draft dodging lunatic, telling veterans to salute the flag. Um, and if you know me, you know that I just think that if you're if you've been with the Phillies over 50 years, you have the right to veto what that script says. Like, I don't know. Now, if I was only there a couple of years and they introduced that to me, I would suggest, like, can we change this? Because I don't like the way this sounds because I didn't serve. But, it is what it is. So, but then I noticed some little things that were changed along the way. And I don't have my notes here. Hold on. Let me see if I got them over here. And there were only 2 things I put on there that were stadium related. Now they talked about the LED boards. I'm not worried about that, but I'm looking at some of the other things that were in there. Um, the first thing that was noted, and a lot of those Phillies blogs, they did make a note of the new climate controlled bullpens. And basically, what it is, you just put a couple of doors there. I think I think they can be open and shut and collapsed and all that. So, I think that's what they do. But a lot of people are saying, "Oh, we can't harass the visiting team's bullpen all game." Well, you can do it when they're warming up, but that's about it. Um, but they did do that. You know, who cares? I mean, we could probably start a rumor that it was the New York Mets that bitched and moaned about it if we really want to. But it's something that's been there for 20 years, and now all of a sudden, oh, we can't do that. Or they put that in. It probably something new with that. But but the one thing I'd never understood, and especially newer ballparks, well, newer, because we're at the back end of this retro park type stadium build. Now it's more um, dome stadium and stuff like that. But um, when I look at this, um, I always notice like some of the different things that you would see there because I'm looking at it as things that can affect the game. Now, the bullpens won't affect the game. Now, if you remember when the stadium was first built, they had two exhibition games with Cleveland here the first season. That was the year. That was when it was the second year of Tomey's stay here in Philadelphia. His first run with Philly. He played for 2 years. It was the second year. They brought Cleveland in for two games, and originally the original plan was Phillies on the top, visiting team on the bottom. And the Phillies bullpen said, no, 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 we can't do this because we're too close to the fans. They're giving us a hard time. So they flipped it for opening day. So, of course, back then, um, landline phones at the time, they had to rewire everything and whatever they had to do. So, um, but, so they did that. And I also noticed that the and I don't know if they're doing this at all permanent stadiums. Now, I I'm not really looking into Tampa Bay Stadium. I'm not really, or not Tampa Bay, as in St. Pete, the stadium in St. Pete. I'm talking about the Steinbrenner Field because I think they'll just do things as if it was an old, just like their stadium in Tampa for Tampa Bay for whatever. But I did notice that at Citizens Bank Park, and it may be something that they're doing at all the places. I don't know, because you got to get as much advertising as possible out there because salaries are going through the roof, and we need to make money whichever way possible. I noticed that instead of having a board and you got an area bare brick, not bare dick, bare brick. You got an area bare brick, and then you had another board. So it appears what they have right now, and it's kind of hard to tell because sometimes your eyes will deceive you, and maybe it's not board, it's maybe they have something else on the wall or whatever. But it looks like it's a wraparound board around home plate, and it may be part of the new LED stuff that they're doing. And we'll get a better look at it tomorrow night when they play a night game, and I'll be sitting here with my TV, watching the end of the game with you guys, and maybe play a victory song after the game if I can find that file or whichever drive I have it on. But those are the two main things that I looked at because I'm looking at different things to you guys because the one thing is that board that's there. I think what's going to happen is even though Citizens Bank Park, I believe, has the shortest backdrop or backstop. I think it's only like 43, 45 feet. So it's not a big area of real estate. But you do have you did have that wall, and a lot of times when the ball would hit that, the catcher would miss it on the rebound, and the pitcher would get it. It'd be like, I can't run here. It hit the wall. So I'm interested in seeing as a Phillies fan who's going to be watching as many games as humanly possible. How is that going to look? I mean, how's that going to affect play? Because instead of that brick wall area, it's now a board. And how will the board affect everything there? So just the little things that I think of that no one else does. But you know, um, it's all little things that I worry about that nobody else does. Um, so I'm always looking at different things here, and I'm just looking, and it was a good game, and Phillies were behind, and the Phillies they can't do squat with starters, but once you get into the bullpen, it's open season. Now, if they can pretend that the starting pitchers are actually relievers, or maybe they can think of them as openers or whatever, maybe you get 15, 20 runs a game. But the Phillies are 3-1 right now. They are in first place, I believe. Um, well, they're tied for first because Miami played two more games because they had a 4-game series with Pittsburgh, and they played tonight. So I think they lost tonight to the New York Mets. Uh, Yeah, no, they won tonight 4-2. Okay, so I'm getting my days confused as well. So I'm looking at all those different things here, and um, we'll get there, and hopefully we will get some playoff baseball again this year down at South Broad Street. But they did get the game in. I do apologize, I canceled, and we'll make up for it. Um, So I saw this yesterday, and I do want to play this video here, and hopefully it doesn't get me dinged off of In the Bleachers YouTube or my YouTube, because I want to play this because I don't know if the Braves fans and Brave Sports Radio is jaded or not, but Jurickson Profar got an 80 game ban. And I'll give some initial thoughts on how they do this whole process for the most part. But I'm going to play this here. Um, so this is from 680 The Fan. That's the sports station in Atlanta. The reason why I follow it on Instagram is because of John Kincaid when he was on 680 The Fan, because he also did the big podcast with Shaq. Well, here's what they mentioned about Jurickson Profar's suspension, and maybe some of it does make sense after some of the things I have to say here. Let's do that and that. Here we go.
That I didn't connect yesterday that I connected late last night, and it was an epiphany. It was an ice cream and vodka induced epiphany.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't need ayahuasca. I don't need to go to a
Sometimes you find the answers at the bottom of the bottle. I understand.
I'm old school. I went right to the ice cream and vodka, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa. I remember being on the Zoom call with Jurickson Profar, and talking about, hey, this is what's different. He was a 31-year-old guy who all of a sudden found a pop to 24 home runs again. 31 years old. And you go, okay, maybe the guy just figured some things out. And then he told us what he figured out. He worked with Fernando Tatis Sr. Oh, that's interesting. Wait. Now when this hits, Fernando Tatis Jr. got popped for 80 games. What's going on?
He said, here, take this. Don't worry about nothing. Don't ask any questions. Take this.
No, let me tell you who I wouldn't have taken anything from. The guy whose son got popped for 80 games. You obviously aren't ahead of the game. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is me talking. I got a bunch of things about this. Was it a spring training test? Was it an off-season test? When do you find out? There was certainly an appeal. Agent finds out Alex Verdugo was signed on March 20th.
So if you want to try to connect dots, maybe they knew at that point because we questioned why they made that move. Well, maybe now we know why they made that move.
Well, I can also tell you it only took 2 clicks on my computer last night to realize MVP Sports Group. They're both represented by the same agency. The thing that I didn't connect yesterday that I connected late last night, and it was an epiphany. It was an ice cream and vodka induced epiphany.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't need.
Okay, and it started playing a second time there. So now it's just conspiracy theory. It's Atlanta sports talk and whatever. But the one thing I will say is what they usually do, and I know this from JC Romero getting suspended, and back then it was a 25-game suspension. I think the suspension at the time was 50 for PEDs, but it was all the wrangling and all that, and they were doing all the appeals and union work while he was pitching in the World Series. So obviously they're doing their due diligence. So now the part about Alex Verdugo, and it's like, well, why are they picking up Verdugo or whatever? So it kind of makes sense that they probably knew, because they will not announce a suspension for PEDs until all the legal ramifications are exhausted. So you don't want to go in there and say, so-and-so got popped for steroids, or I'm sorry, PEDs, whether it's a false positive, whether it's still a positive. But 80 games is 80 games. But, because it's such a long suspension, it's half the season, you do have, with union bargaining, the right to appeal. Or they call it appeal with baseball, but it's the right to grieve. And, he got notified and he went and did what he had to do. Now, could he have mass tests in the past when he was in San Diego? Possible. But I'm not going to go into a conspiracy theory and try to match the dots and whatever. But, I will say this. I just think that, even when you look at his numbers, and I am going to pull up his information here because he ended up hitting 24 home runs last year. So, I didn't want that. I wanted Atlanta, you dumbass. So, it's not even his name ain't even on the roster because he's suspended. So, when you get, and I think we realize it now going through the PED era where everybody was on PEDs or were either on or accused, you realize that maybe something ain't right. And sometimes it's just hard work. But I'm just looking over his numbers here. He had 20 home runs in 2018 and 2019, 18 with Texas, 19 with Oakland. The most he had since then was in 22 with San Diego with 20 with 15. Um, but you're playing in a stadium in San Diego which was not conducive to home runs. So that plays a part in what as well. Even though it has become more homer friendly, they brought in the they did bring in some of the fences a little bit, and they also like with some of the buildings that they're building around the outside of the stadium that has helped with blocking wind and all that. So, but uh, he goes from hitting 9 home runs in Colorado and in San Diego. But that those 9 home runs, he played most of the season in Colorado. You would figure, hey, maybe he should hit more home runs with the thin air, but also you have the humidor as well. All of a sudden, you hit 24 home runs, 85 RBIs, 158 games played. But he had played 152 games in 22. Uh, but it just seems like yeah, maybe there's something going on. So they did find out that so he does find out about this obviously, and probably you can put put the dots together with Alex Verdugo being signed, and maybe that is the case. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just coincidence. I mean, I think it was. Now that I heard that earlier today and replayed it for you guys, yeah, maybe they knew, but they aren't just going to suspend somebody and then say, you're suspended 80 games. Oh, I'm appealing. You got better let me play. No, they're going to, with especially a suspension like this that's so long in time, 80 games, you're going to appeal it, make sure it doesn't get out, and you eventually make your decision. And they make their decision and say, "Oh yeah, it is going to be 80 games," because they're. I mean, I don't know what gets you off of a suspension like that when you're accused like that. I don't think that's happened to anybody, but I'm sure they do like they do in major sports where you have A samples and B samples and all that stuff. All above my pay grade, but you do have a situation where you do get notified. Then you go through the whole collective bargaining process where you have, in baseball's case, a right to appeal. And, that's all hush hush because, you don't know. I mean, it could be he gets suspended, like maybe, I, Adderall. Because I think, and Mike might not remember, but um, I know Shane Victorino had ADD and all that, and he took Adderall. Um, I think somebody either on the Phillies or somebody who crossed paths with the Phillies at the time or had a connection with the Phillies was suspended for Adderall, an Adderall positive that a did not have a did not have a prescription. For some reason Shane Victorino comes in my head because and when you hear him talk, it's like he just keeps talking and talking and talking. But um, but you do see like, well, you had a prescription, but you didn't tell me this, and blah blah blah. Well, we'll reduce it to 40 or something like that. But they didn't do. He went through the process, and he's gone until the end of June. 80 games, and no pay. Well, he does get he does get doubly punished here because this is written into either collective bargaining or bylaws or however you want to phrase it. Not only does he miss 80 games, he cannot participate in the 2025 playoffs. So if the Braves, who are 0-5 right now, do get their asses together and get back on track, Jurickson Profar will not be on that playoff roster. And Mike says it's familiar. I don't remember who it was. I mean, but I think it was an Adderall positive and whatever, and whatever it is. Um, but um, but Profar did test positive for a banned substance. He began his 80-game suspension last night for the start of the 3-game series at Dodger Stadium. He tested positive for chorionic gonadotropin, a performance-enhancing drug according to Major League Baseball. Profar will be eligible to return on June 29th against the Phillies, but will be ineligible for the postseason as part of the suspension. Because if it's PEDs, you don't get to play the postseason either. He signed a $1 million contract with San Diego on February 24, and I was trying to compare the stats and all that. 280 batting average, 459 slugging, or 380 on the base, 450. Yeah, the way that they write these slashes now, it's confusing me. 24 home runs, 85 RBIs, 158 games played. As a result, the Braves signed him to a 3-year, $42 million deal in January to make him their everyday left fielder. So he was going to be the left fielder this year, and now he's got to sit out half the year. And he doesn't get to play in the playoffs. Profar, through the Players Association, said this was the most difficult day of my career. He was devastated by the news. Profar added that he was tested 8 times for PEDs in 2024 and never tested positive. Now, the thing is, what may be the case here, and I think these are random tests too. And he probably got, I don't know if the testing is like it is in the NFL where you go off and you do crazy stuff on the field, like Saquon Barkley rushes for 250 yards against the Rams in the regular season. Oh, by the way, meet Mr. Peacup. So, I don't know if anything like that happens, but I joke around about it all the time. Like, for example, you get this little rinky-dink hitter that isn't even hitting his weight, and he hits this 380-foot bomb down the right field corner. Yeah, I'm going to joke around and say, "Hey, so and so, meet Mr. Peacup." It's just one of the things I say. But when you look at this, I mean, and also the association with Fernando Tatis Sr., and he's also from Curacao, so he's in those Caribbean islands. So say what you want. I just think at least he's admitting to it, and I mean, he probably tried to play I didn't understand what was in, I didn't understand the instructions on the bottle or anything like that. Some people play the no speak English card, but Profar wrote as part of his statement, "This is especially painful for me because anyone who knows me and seen me play knows I'm deeply passionate about the game. There's nothing I love more than competing with my teammates and being a fan favorite. I want to apologize to the entire Braves organization, my teammates, and the fans. It is because of my deep love and respect for the game that I will never knowingly do anything to cheat it." The Braves posted on X saying, "We were surprised and extremely disappointed to learn that Jurickson Profar tested positive for a performance-enhancing substance in violation of Major League Baseball's Joint Prevention and Treatment Program. We fully support the program and are hopeful that Jurickson will learn from this experience. So, they're going to make blanket statements left and right. Now, the suspension obviously is without pay, and it's 80 games. It comes after the Braves got swept by San Diego while scoring a combined 7 runs and 0 over the last 22 innings going into last night's game. So the Braves are shorthanded in the outfield because Ronald Acuna Jr. is not expected back from the injured list for another month. So everything is snowballing for the Braves right now. Jared Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz have been platooning right field in Acuna's absence. For Profar gone, the Braves also turned to as a down-the-road option Alex Verdugo, who was signed to a $1.5 million deal March 20th. And they mentioned that on the video that I showed you, and was optioned to the minor leagues to get at bats. For now, however, the Braves acquired Stuart Fairchild from the Reds for cash considerations earlier on Monday, and added him to the 40-man roster. He was expected to join the team on Tuesday. The Braves were 1 player short last night. So now I don't know if this would be a deterrent, and I saw this today. And I shared a lot of stuff today on there, but I just have to find it here. It must have been on Facebook here. Damn it. Let's see. Oh, and by the way, the Phillies also have glass door fridges in their home dugout now. So that's something new there. Tell me I did not save it or share it. All right, I think I have to play around with the. I gotta play with the Stream Deck tomorrow because I fired. There we go. Yeah, I did see that. He is 4 away. How many games does he have left in the season? Oh no, here it is. We're going to go back to my Instagram. We're going to share that again here. We're talking about the Jurickson Profar PED case here. And maybe this is an even bigger deterrent to keep, or maybe have players fight for, doing the PEDs and stuff. But this was mentioned by Eduardo Perez, who's the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball analyst for one more year. Here's what he had to say, which is very interesting. And you might have to go full screen on this. Or maybe I can zoom in on this. No, it's not going to work. Okay. So that ain't going to work, but I'll read what it says. This was he must have been talking to 680th fan because he's a former Atlanta Brave. On his suspension, on Profar suspension, Eduardo Perez says this is a tough one for the Braves. It's a guy that was going to get on base. I think a player that tests positive should I think a player that tests positive, their contract should be a non-guaranteed contract moving forward for the rest of their career. Damn. Now, I can tell you one thing. Shit, hold on. I think, personally, yeah, they should definitely make that contract, make their contracts non-guaranteed. But you can put something in the contract that basically says, well, if you're going to do this, well, fuck around and find out, because you put a stipulation in the contract, especially if you're an offender, you get suspended. It'd be the same as firing somebody with cause. Your contract is null and void. So, but yeah, that's a great thing that Eduardo Perez suggested, making their contracts non-guaranteed. The Players Association would never go for that, but in because if you do have non-guaranteed contracts, then guess what? You're going to give a non-guaranteed contract to somebody just because you want to. So it's going to go on there. So, but yeah, but he gets suspended 80 games, and Tatis, say what you will, but it may just be on top of all that maybe he may not have been totally clean, but but this is me thinking in horse racing sense, because in some cases you may be this much under the limit. Like, for example, Medina Spirit, who won the Kentucky Derby and was disqualified because of a positive test, he was over the limit by yay much. So, but then again, that led to the 3-year suspension that Baffert had and all that. And we're going to be talking a lot about Baffert on Saturday on Also Eligible. But be interesting to see what happens with everything. So, but Braves are in a lot of trouble right now. And they don't really have the best farm system either. So they could be in some deep trouble until Ronald Acuna comes back. And if he does come back, will he be playing the same as he did in his MVP season he had? But even though it's like, ha Braves, it's also, dude, you fucked up. But you get the idea. And I did mention Also Eligible as well. I will be live Saturday morning, starting at 10 a.m. Going to be looking over the races from Aqueduct and from Keeneland. And it's springtime when Keeneland gets into the mix here with their spring meet. We have the Bluegrass on Saturday. Their Kentucky Oaks race is on Friday. So we won't be covering that on Saturday, obviously. But we'll be looking at least 3 races. There is the Wood Memorial, which I called last year the Morningwood Memorial. I should play that. I should play that short on Saturday morning. I can imagine the PD saying, "The hell was that?" But we're going to be looking at the Wood Memorial on Saturday. That is a race. Actually, you know what? We could do 4 races. We're going to do the Santa Anita race, even though we may not give a pick for that race because there's only 5 horses in the Santa Anita race, which means it will still be it'll be 75 points to winner instead of 100 because of the rules that they have with the races this weekend. But we're going to be looking at the Wood Memorial, which is the Kentucky Derby Prep in New York. We're going to look at the Gazelle, which is for the 3-year-old Phillies going a mile and an eighth. And I think in a perfect world, that would be a mile and a 16th race at Aqueduct, but they don't have a mile and 16th capabilities there with the way that their track is set up. Got the Bluegrass, which is the final race at Keeneland, the final big race at Keeneland. And we do have the race at Santa Anita, the Santa Anita Derby, and the Santa Anita Oaks. The Derby only has 5 horses in it. So, not going to look good for that. The Santa Anita Oaks, let me see if I can find that here. The Santa Anita Oaks only has 6 horses, so at least that race will have full points in that race. But we are looking at potentially up to 5 races we'll be looking at on Saturday with yours truly. But it is a Saturday that I work, so we will have a hard out at 11:15. So if I start running a little long, I'll be getting my thoughts in for all that. So 11:15 with that. So, but we'll start at 10 a.m. and we'll go till 11:15. We are going to work on. I'm also starting my plans for the Kentucky Derby. So I told AJ I need to talk to him tomorrow. So hopefully I can start ironing some things out with that as well, because I know what I want to do, but what I want to do and what ends up happening are 2 totally different things. Because I'm open to some ideas from him and anybody else, but I'm also interested in what bounce some ideas around, because that's for the most part I'm stubborn as hell, but for something like this I want to try something a little different here. So, but enough about that. Now, another guy who's stubborn as hell is Deshaun Watson. Because if you remember, he had denied, everything with all the massages that he got. He was the originator of the Bad Boys Club in the NFL with all the massages he had and everything, and was suspended a million games, whatever it was. But yesterday in Palm Beach, where the owners' meetings were, Jimmy Haslam called the team's trade for quarterback Deshaun Watson a big swing and a miss. Repeat after me. No shit. In March 2022, Cleveland acquired Watson from the Texans in a trade package that included 3 first-round picks. The Browns then signed Watson to a $230 million contract that was fully guaranteed. Now, there is a case that came up within the last week or so, I think. Or am I confusing with the podcast I'm listening, which is way back? Now, there is stipulations to this contract that if something happens that's new, that hasn't been known by the ownership or anybody else, he's gone and he won't get paid his money. So there is a fire with cause type thing in his contract. So if he violates the contract, he doesn't get paid. So he's only started 19 games because of the suspension and the injuries. He's posted one of the lowest total QBR. However they figure that out, I'm not sure, nor do I care. And he suffered consecutive season-ending injuries in 23 and 24. And he may be out for 25, too, because he re-tore his Achilles. Haslam said Monday, Jimmy Haslam, we took a big swing and miss with Deshaun. We thought we had the quarterback. We didn't. And we gave up a lot of draft picks to get him, so we've got to dig ourselves out of that hole. Now, rarely do you admit that you fucked up like this, and you still have him on the roster. I don't remember anybody else mentioning something like this. That's crazy stuff that they admitted to it. To me, at least. Now, he tore his right Achilles tendon in October, underwent a second operation in January after re-tearing his Achilles. They're expecting to miss a significant portion of 25. It could be the whole year. Who knows? But also, what concerns me is it's his right Achilles, so he's pushing off of that leg to throw. Now, granted, throwing a football is not the same as throwing a baseball, but it's still hind leg, power through the ball, that sort of thing. But um, um, so his legal troubles has helped derail his career in Cleveland. He served an 11-game suspension in 22. After more than 24 women accused him of sexual assault and inappropriate conduct during massage sessions, Texas grand juries declined to pursue those criminal charges, but he served his suspension after the NFL and NFL Players Association reached a settlement on this discipline. Now, here's the thing, and I say it all the time, and I've always explained why I always say redacted company. Even though you can find out where I work, no problem. Make you go through a couple extra hoops possibly, So my thinking is, and I mentioned Charlottesville as well, and the guys who were under investigation because it looked like they had Verizon. It looked like he had those shirts on. All right, now you know where I work, nor do I. I mean, I don't care, but I prefer to say redacted because, make people work for it. So, but, they wore the shirts, so they're representing the company, but they couldn't confirm it was them or the shirt or anything like that, but they couldn't do anything with it. But with an NFL player, even though you have the big ass helmets and the face masks and everything, and you still know who the players are. So little by little, So, but it is, you don't necessarily have to be convicted of a crime to be fired from your job or whatever. It's the fact that you are even accused of it because it's all part of code of conduct and everything and collective bargaining and all that BS. So, but the thing is, because of this contract, and mind you, when they gave him that contract, they put the minimum amount that they can get away with in year one, because if you manipulate the contract and make the money backloaded like they did, that minimum contract, he lost 11/16 because I think we're still playing 16 games at the time. 11/16 of $1,000,000. So he still got a couple $100,000, but he didn't get the full million before taxes. So, but and right now, the Browns' quarterback room consists of Watson and Kenny Pickett, who the Eagles traded there in March. Browns coach Kevin Stefanski said Pickett will get an opportunity to compete to start next year. Now, despite the admission that the Watson trade was unsuccessful, Haslam said the team is not tied to taking a quarterback with the second overall pick in the draft. Well, they made the, but this time of year, I think you can go through mock drafts after mock drafts, and you can say whatever you want. You can say, "Hey, I'm drafting Joe Blow from, East West North State." You could say that, but oh yeah, we know you're picking that guy. And then after the after they pick a quarterback, oh, that was the guy what we were looking for all along. Yeah, really. And also what you said on March 31st. Mm-hmm. Okay. But he said it would be great if we get the quarterback, but we're not going to force it. We're going to be patient. We're going to try to accumulate as many really good football players as we can. Now, does that mean they trade down? Does it? It depends what they do, but you got to understand committing to a quarterback for 5 years like that, I think you look at what you're dealing right now with Watson. You think about what you dealt with Johnny Manziel. Um, And Mike is thinking the same way I am. I call BS. The Browns know they need to select a quarterback. Yeah, and they're in the position where they can get one of the top 2 quarterbacks easy because of the fact they're the number 2 pick, and it is fitting because they are the Cleveland Browns, and I still think that they need to make the poop emoji their 50-yard line logo, not that whatever it is, but you get the idea. Um, so so we'll see what happens with everything here. But I mean, I would think that they need a quarterback, but I don't really pay attention to mock drafts that much. Um, we'll see. Um, but that's at the end of April, and that's in Green Bay this year, and um, we'll see who gets called by the Cleveland Browns. So that's there. Now, poor scripting by me tonight because I probably should have put. I'm just looking over this scroll here. Thoughts on the Phillies home opener. Profar suspended. Yeah, well, actually, that's on me because I didn't see this here. So, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the Torpedo Bats, and actually, what I saw here. I am going to pull up Twitter, aka X. Um, and Mike says, "How about for the Browns nickname the Brownstains?" I think I've used that many times before. you know, and every time they win a game, they flush a toilet. But let me just set something else here. Once again, I'm going to tempt fate here. So I'm going to share this tab again. I'm going to share my screen again. This is from MLB Network. Hopefully this doesn't get me dinged on YouTube or X, but who cares? We're talking about the Torpedo Bats, and I'm going to give initial thoughts after this, but here are some of the thoughts that were mentioned um, in an interview with MLB Network earlier today from the CEO or the co-founder and CEO Kurt Ainsworth from Marucci Sports. So here you go with that.
I guess what people want to know is, does this technology, will it make average hitters great hitters? How would you answer that?
I think that's tough. I think it could make you a better hitter at certain levels, right? If you're a great player, it's almost like you're talking about golf and you're talking about blades and cavity. I think it gives somebody that right now they're using a blade, it gives them a little bit more of a cavity to hit with. So we're not talking about making the barrel of the bat wider this way. We're talking about giving them a better hitting area, side to side. So I do think there'll be a lot of players that could perform better with this. I think this is not just a fad that'll come and go. I think there'll be some form of a torpedo bat that will last in the game for quite some time now.
Hey, Kurt, I'm really curious, having been a former major league pitcher and spent your life figuring out how to get hitters out. I want to make him hit it on the end of the bat. I want to get the guy jammed. How much has that knowledge helped you in talking with the guys that are doing the technology?
Well, look, the technology far surpasses what I would think or on the field, and it's great to have that on-field knowledge. Our master craftsman here was a former pitcher in the major leagues as well, Brett Laxton. So I mean, it's good to have guys that are around baseball, but the data these guys have access to now I mean, they don't miss much, right, at all. And you have all these, NASA guys and MIT guys that are behind the scenes working with the clubs.
So tell us about
they give them so
how
much.
deep do they go with the technology? You're talking about guys from MIT. You're talking about all these guys.
Yeah.
What are they looking at? What numbers? What degree are they going to? They're looking at everybody's at bat, balls they foul off. What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at everything from, spin rates against them. They're looking at their swing speeds, their launch angles. They're looking at where the ball hits the bat more often. So if you can move the mass into where the ball hits more often, it gives them a better chance for success. And in certain ways, if you remove the end of the bat, it allows some of those balls to be fouled off as opposed to be put in play. They could be out, so it gives them a chance then to now hit the next pitch on the bigger sweet spot.
Okay, so I admit when I first saw these bats over the weekend, I'm like, man, these look weird because basically what they did was they moved the wood, the main portion of the wood, the sweet spot. They made all the wood towards that sweet spot area, and it seems a little weird. It almost looks like a bowling pin in a way, but the way that it looks, um, it does look a little weird. And I don't think that we would be talking about this like we have been because the Yankees hit 9 home runs on Saturday. Now, granted, Nestor Cortez probably could have given up a lot more than 3 home runs on his first 3 pitches on Saturday if he really wanted to. You know, even if they had regular bats and not these torpedo bats, and regular bats is a relative term. Um, you do have, you do have a smaller stadium in Yankee Stadium, and it's not hard to hit a home run there. It's not as hard as the old Yankee Stadium back before it got renovated. I mean, center field was like what 470 at one point, but you do have um, all these things that are going on, and I just think it's just a coincidence in some regards that it's the Yankees, that apparently the Yankees came up with this, and apparently Giancarlo Stanton was the one that used the bat during the playoffs last year. And oh, by the way, he was the ALCS MVP, I should say. So say what you want, but I think it's just like, I mean, we were talking about PEDs earlier. Could we say that, like Kurt Ainsworth said, in a way, like twisting his words around a little bit, maybe it's not everybody that benefits from this type of a bat. Like, for example, if you think about it, um, and I'm going to compare it with the Al Jazeera thing pre um, pre-COVID, before Al Jazeera said, "Oh, we ain't going to broadcast in America no more after this," because they had a story, and it's still available on YouTube, about um, PEDs in sports and all that, and HGH and all that, and Peyton Manning was mentioned in it, Ryan Howard was mentioning it, and yet all these star players. And then you had this one guy, Taylor Teagarden, who was admitted to using PEDs, but he was a suck ass player. So, there's always somebody who does not benefit from something, whether it's a legit thing or a cheating thing. But whether it was really the Yankees that came up with this idea or whatever, the Yankees say that, let's give them their credit. They did the work with MIT. Now everybody wants these bats. And also Ellie De La Cruz used the bats for the first time last night. Gets 4 hits, 7 RBIs, 2 home runs, I think it was. Um, you know, I think what you may see is the pitchers getting a little bit ahead of the pitchers. And it's like, okay, well, how do we pitch to these hitters using these bats, and how do we get the advantage back and all that? So there's probably going to be an adjustment period, and you're going to have a few games that are going to look like video game scores like 23-22, 23-18, something like that, 23-1. Or last night when Chicago ruined my parlay when they beat the Sacramento A's 18-3. Oh, I'm sorry, the Athletics. Sorry, I'm calling them Sacramento because that's where they're playing right now. But when I look at everything here, um, the bats are legal because I think it's the circumference of the bat has to be, and I think the number is 2.61 inches around. So they are meeting standards here. And if you got a question about a bat, hey take the bat out, play. We want that inspected by Major League Baseball. So they can do that. It's just you don't. But in terms of the game itself, like for example, the one thing I said was, why has nobody gone after Shohei Ohtani? Because the ball coming off his bat just sounds different. And especially last year, I'm surprised nobody said, hey, I want you to take that bat out of play. I mean, but then again, he probably has about 30 bats like that in his rack, in the rack, so he can just do whatever. But the bats are legal, so they're probably here to stay. It's just, you just got to get used to this. And I just think Ellie De La Cruz is an up and coming player. So it isn't like, it is like we didn't know about Ellie De La Cruz before this year, because last year he took the game by storm last year, more stealing bases, but he took the league by storm last year. So it was. I mean, this isn't the first go round for him. So I'm not surprised with a 2 home run, 4 hit, 7 RBI performance last night. And even with the Yankees, 9 home runs. It seems a bit extreme, but it. You got to understand, Milwaukee hasn't won a game either. I don't think. Let me check that out real quick. Let me do one thing here real quick.
So I just.
One of the reasons we like using
The thing that
Okay. So, but the thing is, if it was somebody that we never heard of, and we would be saying this about this guy.
Who the fuck is that guy?
If somebody were to hit 3 or 4 home runs, and it's some punch and Judy hitter hitting 3 or 4 home runs, then you raise the red flags. But when you have the Yankees hitting 9 home runs, and they're all the big boys that hit, I believe, even the guys that weren't really that big of a hitter, you still expect them to hit 15, 20 home runs in a season minimum. So, let me go back to that score on Saturday. That's box score, I should say, 20-9. Nestor Cortez gave up 5 home runs in 2 innings. Well, that's kind of expected. Paul Goldschmidt hit a homer. Cody Bellinger hit a homer. Aaron Judge hit 3. Not surprised by that. He had 8 RBIs. Jazz Chisholm doesn't surprise me. Anthony Volpe doesn't surprise me. Austin Wells, you know, you're starting to get into this territory that I'm talking about here. Oswald Peraza, he hit a home run, but I need to know more about him. He's 5'11", 200. Let's see what happens here. But also you got to remember, you get to this, you get these points in a game where, and it happened last night with Sacramento and Chicago. Sorry, I'm calling them Sacramento MLB. Um, just looking here. Okay, nobody's. Yeah, the Yankees gave up in the bottom of the eighth too. But the thing is, you get to the eighth inning and you see home runs in the eighth inning of a blowout, and we got to put a fielder into the game. No, we need to get rid of that rule altogether. I mean, if there's one rule that needs changing, it's no field players, no regular fielders pitching until every pitcher has been exhausted from the bullpen. That's what the rule should be. Come on, Manfred, make one rule that makes some fucking sense. Even though the pitch clock has worked to his advantage, but you know, um, I if Garrett Stubbs was still with the big club here, and the reason why he's down at the minors right now is because Rafael Marchand, the backup catcher for the Phillies, he could not be sent down to AAA because if they did, he had no options left. So basically, what that means is you had to put him on waivers and designate him for assignment. So you had to release him for the 40-man roster, and then the guarantee that he would be there after the waiver period ended would be pretty much none because somebody would have picked him up. So that's why you kept Marchand. Stubbs still had a option left, so he ended up going to AAA. So we could say Garrett Stubbs, for example, or we can use Rafael Marchand in this case. Let's say Rafael Marchand or Garrett Stubbs or even better, a pitcher. Even though the pitchers don't hit anymore, which is bullshit if you ask me, because just the way baseball is. Um, if Stubbs or Marchand or a pitcher that doesn't isn't known for hitting the ball well gets 3, 4 homers in a game, yeah, that's red flag territory. But when you have a team that's known as the Bronx Bombers hitting 9 homers in a game, you know, it doesn't raise red flags, but it starts to get your attention. Ellie De La Cruz doesn't raise a red flag, but it gets your attention because, oh, he's using that bat. Like, I saw Monday. Now, I think it was just Alec Bohm. Alec Bohm used that bat. He didn't get a home run. So if you want to say it's a red flag, so be it. But the bats are legal. And I'm sure Major League Baseball will probably put in a new rule just to, if things get out of hand, the same way the NFL has made all these rule changes that have hit the fan over the last couple of days. Um, but I do want to talk about the NFL here as well before we close up shop here tonight. The NFL meetings, they were down in Palm Beach, Florida, and I want to go back to Instagram here. Jeffrey Lurie talked to the media today, and we're the team, like I'm a part of the team. The Eagles are the innovators of the tush push, the brotherly shove, the hiney over the liney, whatever you want to call it. But you do have a lot of this stuff going on right now, and everybody without substantial data are trying to get the tush push banned. Well, here is Jeffrey Lurie with. It's gonna. I'm gonna purposely do it. Purposely putting that on there first. We'll go to there so you can hear the whole sound. So we'll hear what Jeffrey Lurie has to say here. So here we go.
I didn't connect yesterday.
One of the reasons we like using the tush push is we think it's a safer play.
The thing that
One of the reasons we like using the tush push is we think it's a safer play than the quarterback sneak. The quarterback sneak, if you talk to quarterbacks about it, there's more spearing going on. They're less protected by players around them. And one of the reasons we got motivated to develop an expertise in this play is it was more protective to the quarterback. And so it's ironic that, people would bring up health and safety. We're at the top of the game in terms of wanting health and safety on every play. We voted for hip drop tackle and defenseless receiver. We will always, always support what is safer for the players. It's a no-brainer. If this is proven to be less safe for the players, we will be against the tush push. But until that's the case, to me, there'd be no reason to ban this play. One of the
So that was Jeffrey Lurie. Brings some good points there. And, it isn't just because it's the tush push or the brotherly shove or the hiney over the liney. But I think part of this is the fact that teams can't defend it. And it doesn't look like a football play. It's a rugby play. It's not a football play. Well, the only difference between Tom Brady, who likes getting his ass grabbed, but not this way, and Jalen Hurts with the tush push, brotherly shove, hiney over the liney. The only difference is you got guys that basically create the seal around him where he can't get that hit that Jeffrey Lurie was talking about. And I never really thought about it that way. And like Mike says, in other words, they don't like us. We don't care. But the plan got tabled till next month's meeting in Minnesota. The NFL owners plan to continue discussions about the Eagles' short yardage tush push play after tabling a proposal Tuesday to ban it. The Packers authored the proposal, which has earned support of 16 NFL teams, two sources called ESPN's Kalen Kaler. At least I think that's how that name's pronounced. Now, the NFL bylaws require a minimum 24 votes to approve a change. The topic is likely to be revisited when owners gather for their spring meetings May 20th and 21st in Eagan, Minnesota. Now, these deliberations occupied owners, general managers, and coaches for much of this week's annual league meeting, mostly because it seemed to target the Super Bowl champion Eagles for a legal play that has been largely unstoppable over the last 3 seasons. The Packers' proposal was written specifically for the play, unlike most rule proposals, by prohibiting an offensive player from immediately pushing a teammate who was lined up directly behind the snapper and receives the snap. Now, while there are some subjective concerns about the safety risk of the play, the NFL's Health and Safety Department had no data that suggested a single injury has occurred as a result of the Eagles or any other team using it. If I remember, in 2024, no, 2023, the New York Giants tried running the play. They failed so miserably, two of their players got hurt. But it's the Giants, so who gives a shit? But other than that, you really don't see actual injuries. Now, Chris Jones got hurt and missed a couple of plays or was holding his neck after Eagles scored a touchdown a couple of plays later, or even on that play that Jalen Hurts scored that first touchdown. The thing is, he wasn't lined up properly. He was lined up perpendicular to the Eagles' offensive line, thinking, "Oh, this is how we'll stop it." Well, guess what? That's how you were holding your neck because you weren't lining up the way you're supposed to. So you did that to yourself. So now the Bills were the only other team that used it regularly last season, and they combined with the Eagles to call 65 of the 101 tush-push runs in 2024. But committee chair Rich McKay said last week and reiterated on Tuesday that the league generally frowns upon rule changes and only target one or two teams. Well, the fact that the fact that Buffalo is trying to get rid of the play. They're trying to go after one team with this and not all teams. So the NFL prohibited players to push ball carriers for much of its history before changing the rules to allow it in 2005, citing the difficulty of officiating it. During Tuesday's meeting, McKay said the Packers offered to change the focus of potentially reinstating the historic rule. So Green Bay is going to take the brunt of the criticism, especially here in Philadelphia, but they're trying to do some additional things here so it'd be a general rule and not just one play, because if it's just one play, then the NFL will frown upon it. But when you're talking about bringing back an old rule, then maybe you do. But now the distinction is that it would also ban players from pushing ball carriers downfield and thus eliminate the focus on the Eagles' play. So they're focusing on all plays now, not just the honey over the line. McKay said a lot of teams have a lot of views. I think, number one, I'm going to go back to what I said the other day, which is you'd never like any discussion in any room to be projected toward a team or two. It's never something we've ever liked doing. So I think the idea Tuesday was, as opposed to voting on this particular proposal today, Green Bay asked, could we go back and talk about reintroducing the 2004 language, study it, understand it, and talk about it again when we get to May. Now, here's the thing. When the way it was worded, and this is where you get into the subjective nature of these calls, and then you can't replay and all this stuff, or even with the new things that have come up over the last day or two. What constitutes immediate pushing and shoving? Is it the very second he has the ball? Is it half a second? Is it a second? If you wrote that rule in, then you're talking about, in general, when does the immediate pushing begin? Is it as soon as the ball snapped? Because technically, even if you write that particular rule, it does take about half a second for the backs to get to Hurts's hiney. So, So how you define immediate in terms of NFL rules is something that would be interesting to look at. But when it comes to something like this, you know, you got to make it the whole rule, and that whole rule. I mean, that's going to affect everything because the way the NFL is, you know, you get an offensive lineman who gives a gentle nudge to the pile and gives somebody an extra half a yard on a 3rd and 14. It's like, oh, you're stuck at 13 yards here with 6 people here. Oh, let me just let me nudge them a little bit to get that extra yard. So that's the thing. You're going to get to a point now if you make it this whole encompassing rule instead of the tush push, then you're getting even more subjective, and you're getting to the point that that they mentioned here back in 2005, the difficulty of officiating the rule. I mean, there's blatant cases and a lot of words, but you got all the stuff that you're talking about. So Packers president Mark Murphy later added, really what we talked about was going back to the language we had before in the league up until I think 2005 when the change was made. So that would basically prohibit pushing a runner. So Roger Goodell said Tuesday, there are safety issues that are being considered with the tush push while acknowledging there's very little data on the play. Now, and the thing is, could a major injury occur? Yeah. Does the NFL really care about injuries? Not really. I mean, the only reason why they make it look like they care is because of that concussion lawsuit many years ago. If it wasn't for that concussion lawsuit, we may not even be in this position. It's like, fuck it. Let them do it. But, so Goodell added, it's beyond data. It's also the mechanism of injury that we study that leads us to show the risk involved with a particular play. I do think that's a lot of discussion about going back to the previous rule. The reality of that is, I think that makes a lot of sense in many ways because that expands it beyond just the single play. There are a lot of plays where you see someone pushing or pulling somebody that are not in the tush-push formation that I think do have an increased risk of injury. And so I think the committee will look at that and come back in May with some proposals. Jeffrey Lurie confirmed the league probably will be discussing it in May and that the team has to be ready for every result. And this was, and you saw the video where Lurie made the case for it to be, to keep the tush push. And he said it because he did say as well, it is a precision play that is effective for Philly because of its top end offensive line and quarterback and Jalen Hurts who can squat 600 pounds. It's not only that; you got the number one offensive line coach probably in the history of the NFL, and Jeff Stoutland. If it wasn't for him, the tush push would probably fail 80% of the time. And failing is a subjective thing because of the fact that when you think about it, is it a failure when you run it on third down when you have 3rd and 2 and you get a yard and a half? No, it's not necessarily a fail. It's not necessarily a complete success, but it's like a small goal. Like, for example, I want to lose 30 pounds. Okay. I'm not going to sit there and say to myself, oh, I need to lose 30 pounds. The best way to do it is, let's see if I can get to my 5-pound weight goal. Boom, I hit it. Okay, let's go to the next the next 5-pound goal. Boom, I hit that. Okay, let's go to that third one. That's what I mean. Because, success is more than just getting that first down or getting that touchdown. It's and Mike agrees with me. Jeff Stoutland is a Hall of Famer. Yeah, it's only a matter of time. And there's a reason why when the Eagles fire coaches, Jeff Stoutland stays on the staff. And I think Chip Kelly brought him in. So that's probably one of the few things that Chip Kelly did do right here in Philadelphia. Um, so I don't think that video. Lurie mentioned this in the video, but he says, I don't ever remember a play being banned because a single team or a few teams were running it effectively. It's part of what I think most of us love about football is that it's a chess match. Let the chess match play out. And if for any reason it does get banned, we'll try to be the very best at short yardage situations. We got a lot of ideas there. Now, there's no injury data to support the ban, but NFL Chief Medical Officer Dr. Alan Sills did tell owners this week that the mechanics of the play could lead to injury, sources told ESPN. Another source said that some owners warned their colleagues that a serious injury was just a matter of time. But the thing is, and Mike, you'll agree with me. I'm sure anybody else that's watching will agree with me. And, even those that are watching on Twitch, on X, and on YouTube, and feel free to chime in, isn't football the sport where any play can lead to a serious injury? I mean, let's talk about the ultimate serious injury. Damar Hamlin. Thankfully, he was able to step back onto a football field a year later. I mean, he had the ultimate serious injury on a fluke play where I forget which receiver it was. I'm not sure if it was Higgins or Jamar Chase, but they hit Damar Hamlin, perfect timing, and I don't mean perfect in a good way, but just the way everything would work out, that Damar Hamlin had cardiac arrest on the field, was actually dead on the field, and was brought back to life. So if you're telling me, and feel free to share this with the NFL, even if you want to, even though I've never played football in pads or whatever, but I think I have enough smarts to know from watching football and seeing Joe Theismann snap his leg. Michael Irvin almost break it. Actually, I think he did break his neck on the turf at the vet. Wendell Davis blowing out both knees on the same play. Name the major injury. I don't care what play it is, contact or even non-contact injury. Serious injury is a matter of time, whether it's contact or non-contact. Football is just that type of a sport. And that's why you wear helmets and padding and everything that they wear. And even that won't completely protect somebody. But you are talking, and I'm not arguing this as an Eagles fan. I'm just trying to put some logic into this to support Jeffrey Lurie's case here, because any play can lead to serious injury. God, let's even go to baseball, for example. Anybody remember Dave Dravecky, the left-handed pitcher for the San Francisco Giants? I think he was still with the Giants at the time. He went to throw a pitch and Mike actually says wise words. He's one of the few people that have said that for the last 6 months. No, okay. But seriously, football is the sport where a major injury can occur, a serious injury in the to quote the text of that article, a serious injury can occur on any play. And even the most innocent of hits, like in DeMar Hamlin's case, can lead to cardiac arrest. So when you look at the tush push, yeah, some players are going to get up like they got the shit kicked out of them in a fight, but you quickly recoup. But that's all part of the Eagles' MO over the last couple of years under Nick Sirianni, who in this article said, I think it's an exciting play. It was really cool to hear some people talk about it this week and what they think of it, the excitement it brings to the game. Well, the excitement that the Eagles fans have when they know it's 3rd-and-1, and we know that, Jalen Hurts is going to get his ass felled up. Yay. But and I joke around with that, but you get the idea. But yeah, it's really a play that, if you really think about it, any play can lead to serious injury. Share what I said to the NFL. They'll say, I guarantee you they are going to say this about me.
Who the fuck is that guy?
But I'm just using a little bit of logic here. I'm not some person that can barely put 3 words together because I live down south in Redneckville, USA. I am well educated. I got not 1 but 2 degrees from Drexel University. I was doing 8th grade math in 1st grade. I'm still only doing 8th grade math, it seems. But think about it. Serious injuries can happen all the time, plain and simple. So, just something that helps Jeffrey Lurie's case here, the Eagles' case here, Nick Sirianni's case here. And I'm sure and the thing is, I don't think they've shown everything that they can do with that tush-push setting. Because, we got to see a couple of pitches to the running backs. We still haven't seen them try to throw a pass out of it, I don't think, but it is what it is. So that got tabled the next month, but we did have some things that were approved over the last couple of days that are going to take effect this year. Now, first thing is, and this is separate from everything with the rule changes, and this is more procedural stuff. But the NFL Players Association approved a tweak to the league rules for flexing Thursday night games on Amazon Prime, reducing the window of notifying teams of a change to 21 days. The window had been 28 days since the rule was enacted in a contentious vote before the 2023 season. Now, in the 2 years, they only used it once, and that was flexing out Cincinnati and Cleveland, moved them from a Thursday to a Sunday game. And Denver and the Chargers moved 3 days earlier to a Thursday night game. It also works out as a division matchup. You don't have cross-country flights and stuff like that. So I think that's taken into account as well. At least I hope. But like some owners in 2023, like John Mara of the Giants, vehemently oppose allowing such a significant flex option, even at the long window. But but that's the only change to the Amazon Flex rule, if you want to call it that, the Thursday Flex rules. No other part of the rule has changed. The league can flip a Sunday afternoon game into a Thursday night game and move the originally scheduled game to a Sunday afternoon game during weeks 13 through 17. No team will be required to flex to a Thursday night game more than once, and the maximum number of Thursday night games will remain 2 per team. So the Thursday night flex option can be applied no more than 2 times during the season. Now, one question I do have, and I guess this is the case, but then you're going to get into Christmas, and I did see today that this upcoming season there's going to be 3 games on Christmas Day because Christmas is on a Thursday this year. You're going to see 2 games on Netflix, and then the night game will be on Amazon. So, but you do have those 3 games, and but in terms of this, I mean, I don't. I mean, I don't like. I mean, I think we know why Thursday night games are a thing. It's all about the money, and I just really don't like what they're doing. But it is what it is, and it's an opportunity to see your team play in prime time, even though you do have to play around with whatever. And truthfully, you don't need an Amazon Prime account because all you need is to go to twitch.tv/Amazon Sports. I think it is. I forget what it is, but all you need is that. So if you follow that particular account on Twitch and you have a smart TV like I can, 55-inch TV, boom. Let's watch the game on my TV. Wait, I thought it was on Amazon Prime. Yeah, it is. But I follow it and they show the games on Twitch. Bada bing, bada boom, wham bam, thank you, man. So that was more procedural stuff. But here's the actual rules that actually were approved, that were voted on today. So a variety of rule changes were approved today. The dynamic kickoff, they're going to have the touchbacks at the 35-yard line, and a tweak to the regular season overtime rule to mirror the postseason rules. So the kickoff proposal was broken into 2 parts. Owners approved moving a touchback spot from the 30 to the 35-yard line. Proposed changes to onside kick rules were tabled by owners for more discussion at the meeting scheduled for May. The committee proposed some mild alignment tweaks and also suggested eliminating the requirement that onside kicks can occur only in the 4th quarter. But the only thing is, you still have to announce it. So, like, for example, I think towards the end of the 3rd quarter, I think it was 34-7, 34-6. And I think pre-2024, Chiefs probably would have onside kicked there, but they couldn't do it because of the rules. But the NFL projects that the kickoff return rate will rise between 60 and 70%, with touchbacks moving to the 35-yard line. Competition Committee Chairman Rich McKay said last week. Or maybe they need to move it back to the 30-yard line again because you got like Brandon Aubrey who can kick 65 to 70-yard field goals if he really wants to. So, but another rule that they did mention that was approved: both teams will now be able to possess the ball in overtime in the regular season, even if the team scores an offensive touchdown on its first possession after the proposal. Now, this was a proposal submitted by the Eagles, and they've always been pushing this particular rule, some sort of the overtime rule. The original proposal was for a 15-minute overtime period, but that was amended to 10. Now, I just think unless the team that gets the ball scores right away, like for example, the Eagles, they can just pound the ball for 10 minutes, kick a field goal, no time left. Okay, well, what are you going to do about the other team there? So I think you have to realize that this is a bad rule change, even though I understand the spirit of the rule because we got to see it in the Super Bowl. But in a 10-minute period, and we've seen it a few times in the NFL, a team has the ball for 8.5 minutes, and oh, by the way, you're in 2-minute mode because guess what? You only have X amount of time left. Now, do they need to amend the rule so that the other team gets a full possession and not the minute and a half? Maybe. But I think that this may be a rule that may get amended again next owners meeting in 2026. That's just me. I just think, I mean, I don't like the 10-minute rule to begin with, but I understand why they do it. And the reason why they do this is because there was a Sunday afternoon football game in Tampa. It was the Raiders and the Bucks. They went the full 15 minutes of overtime, and it was in extreme heat and humidity. Tampa Bay, I think, even lost that game. Then they had to play Thursday night in Carolina. They were like a 4 or 5 point favorite. I don't even think they scored 3 points in a game. They were so wiped out from playing 75 minutes of football in the extreme heat that, when Thursday came around, they just couldn't play it. So as a result, they made the overtime periods 10 minutes. So that's why we have a 10-minute overtime period in the regular season. Now, you're probably going to have that amended because I'm sure there's going to be a couple of teams that complain 10 minutes is too short, which should have been said from the very beginning because a team has the ball for 8.5 to 10 minutes. Well, yeah, it's tough luck, but guess what? You have to figure something out because you didn't have that. You didn't think of this rule totally through. Just because it's 10 minutes, you have to give them. I think you got to give them a full possession to tie the game, but that's just me. So they also expanded the league's replay assist system. On-site replay official will be permitted to reverse flags that are thrown for hits to defenseless players, along with fouls for face mask, horse collar, tripping, and running into or roughing the kicker. Now, the replay official will not be permitted to call a penalty for a play in which no flag was thrown, however. So, like, for example, there was one play where the Rams were playing on Thursday night. I think it was Minnesota. And I think it was Sam Darnold got grabbed by the face mask, and they didn't call a penalty. Well, the way that this is reading, if there was a flag, he can review it. But he cannot review it if they never throw the flag. So you're expanding it, but not the way the fans wanted to expand it, because they want the flag to be thrown because of the penalty in that case, because, you just cost us the game. Well, that's still going to happen. It's just that the other way around. Well, did he really get the face mask or not? Then you get into semantics with all this stuff. So, Detroit's proposal to eliminate an automatic first round as a penalty imposed for defensive holding and illegal contact did not pass despite the Lions' pleas. But then again, Detroit had so many of those penalties that's why they did it. A bylaw proposal to make playoff seeding based on regular season records as the guiding principle rather than division championships was tabled for further discussion. Now, personally, what I would do is you still seed 1 through 4 for division winners, 5, 6, and 7 for wild cards. But if that wild card has a better record than that division winner, then you flip the home site. You don't go, well, Minnesota was the third best team. We're going to put them in at number 3 just because they had the same record as the Eagles, but the Eagles won the tiebreaker. No, you don't do it with that. You do it the way the NBA used to do it, where, like for sometimes the second division winner would be the number 2 seed, and the top team that did not win a division was 3, but 3 would have home field advantage over the 2 because the 3 had the better overall record compared to the 2. Just on the sake that they won a division doesn't necessarily mean you get to be home court. The 3 seed gets home court because their record is actually better. Now, that's what I would rather see. But, I understand why they want to do that. So, and then there was a couple of different things I won't get into because I don't understand them. But yeah, it's a lot of changes coming up in the NFL, but we're still waiting to see if the tush push survives. And if NFL really wanted to hear what somebody has to say that has a little bit of a brain, follow my video. We'll see what they do. But anyway, so man, I ran long, 2 hours and 6 minutes tonight. But I had a lot to talk about because we had no show last night because with the weather and everything else, and it was storming, but I was like, because I was trying to time it out, it just wasn't. It was just like the storm hit right before I was starting, and when AJ was finishing up his show. So that'll be it for tonight. And once again, I do apologize for last night, and we will get this audio out if you're watching live or caught pieces of it. If you subscribe, especially if you subscribe to the audio, subscribe to me on YouTube at Joe Quills. Subscribe to In the Bleachers on YouTube. Subscribe to Twitch. That's the most important one. Twitch.tv/Joe Quills. If you subscribe to that, make sure you have your notifications on, because if you got one of those handy dandy smartphones, which 90% of America does now, you will get that alert right away. I'll be like, oh shit, it's time for a show. I mean, like, for example, with me, I will sit here and there is a stream that I watch on 5 o'clock. Ariel Epstein, the prop queen, does have her sports gambling show at 5 o'clock. So I didn't watch it today, but I do watch it. I did watch the first 2 episodes of that. And then you do have you do have all different things that are going on. So, like, and also when a Bleacher Brothers show comes on, I turn into moderator mode and I just keep track of everything. And if some spammer comes in, boom, see ya. But yeah, that's going to be it for tonight. I do appreciate each and every one of you that took the opportunity to watch here tonight. And just a reminder, let me go here. Socials. You can see everywhere. You can find me on there. And also my eligible links. And that will be at 10 o'clock on Saturday. And we're also starting to play in the Kentucky Derby stream. Maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. I don't know. I have an idea of what I want to do. It's just a matter of what does AJ think? Because it's starting to get that point where I want to bounce ideas around in regards to the big day. So, but that is it for this show. And I do appreciate each and every one of you that watched, even those that were quiet. And we will be back tomorrow night at 9 o'clock with more stuff. And hopefully we'll get ready for another Eagles win. As the the Phillies. Let me give myself one of those. Oh, wait, it's there. No, it's not that one. Hold on. I'm a dope. Here you go. All right, that's it. My mind's getting fried, so do appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll do a live again tomorrow night. That's right, we are going to. Come on. I'll probably get 3 back to back now. Bang, bang, bang. Don't lie. But anyways, I do appreciate. There you go. We'll do it live tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. So do appreciate each and every one of you that have watched on X, on YouTube, and on my Twitch. Have a great night, everybody. I'll see you in the winner's circle. See you tomorrow.